TradeSquare is Australia's first business-to-business marketplace connecting people, brands and organisations into this diverse ecosystem in a unique global landscape. Through pivoting, transforming and reshaping, Australian businesses have an opportunity to create the model for the future that aligns with the world's needs and leveraging the power of a collaborative approach. Through the TradeSquare podcast, we will bring together dynamic, diverse and thought-provoking leaders from business, government and organisations to have conversations to further enable new thinking for the future. Welcome to TradeSquare, Australia's leading business-to-business marketplace. I'm Catherine Vandermeulen, and joining me today on the TradeSquare podcast are the co-founders of Punct, Yifat, Shirben and Linden. How are you both?
Good, thanks.
Great, thank you.
Great to be here.
Thank you so much for joining us. Obviously, we are going to be exploring the world of Punct and everything that you guys stand for and the wonderful work that you do. So I'd love if you could define Punct in 5 words and what those would be.
5 words is it's a bit short. It's even shorter than an elevator pitch, so that's that's a challenge. But I think that if I have to really sum it up, what we do in Punct is we're turning online words into bottom line numbers. Might be more than 5 words, but pretty close. But yeah, that's what we basically do here in Punct.
And so tell us about the work that you do at Punct and how the idea came about.
So Punct was born out of a need that we found out in the market. We've been helping technology companies with honing in their messaging for a few years. And we found out that this work that we've done with them and the great work that they've done on their messaging and to be able to explain themselves better was great, but none of that flew into the product. And there was an inconsistency that happened there between what the user or the customer found when he was talking to the product, to the marketing collaterals and to the onboarding, and then when he was talking to the actual product, where he was talking to a backend developer. And so there's a misconsistency in the user experience, but also there was a plunge in business metrics. And this is where we decided to come up with Punct that is focused on the UX writing, that helps take in all that message and brain tone and style, and also to settle the communication between the user and a digital interface, which is so important, especially now where our use of digital interfaces has increased so much. And this is where the idea came about.
And so most people know why messaging is so important, but why user experience writing, UX, as you guys define it, and what role does it play?
Look, at the end of the day, communication is a human instinct. And so as humans, we're constantly seeking to communicate either with each other or with our environment. So we even talk to non-human things like our pets and our plants, and that includes our tech devices as well. So I'm sure you found yourself screaming at the computer at one point of time in your life. Now, the funny thing is that we actually expect those non-human things to communicate back to us as if they were humans. So to listen, to respond, to be in context, to use the relevant words. And digital interfaces are no different in that sense, okay? So the UX writer or content designer, some people actually call it content designers, our job is to ensure that these interfaces are aligned to these inevitable expectations of humans. So as Lee said, our role as UX writer is to settle this communication between the users and the digital interfaces and to make them communicate with our users in as human as possible manner. And that means that the UX writers, as UX writers, we need to be able to use the right words at the right time in order to do things like reduce frustration, to build trust, to celebrate success, to help our user better understand the message, to easily and quickly complete tasks, to keep them motivated, basically to provide them with a positive experience. That's why it's user experience. Now, this then translates to the business, higher conversion rates, better retention, enhanced engagement, increased loyalty and advocacy, all those things that actually impact bottom lines. So that's why we see it as such an important role in the entire messaging scheme of things.
And so thinking about from a business perspective, how do people know that they need help with UX writing and the messaging?
So there are several symptoms, we'll call it, that if you experience them, it's probably a good sign that you need help with UX writing or messaging, depends on where you are at your journey. The first one being, is it taking you too long to explain your business or your product to potential leads? Especially if you have a very unique offering or you're trying to differentiate yourself from the market. If you can't do it and you find it hard, you probably need help with messaging and then with UX writing to complete that. If your support team is busy answering the same questions over and over again, that probably means that you have some kind of issue with explaining something in the user's journey, whether it's the product, how to use it, how to pay for it, anything that keeps popping up at support team over and over. We actually, when we work with companies, one of the first things we do is actually look at support tickets and talk to the support team, because they have so much insight into what's going on in the business. People don't even realize that. If your leads or customers or users seem to get stuck at a specific point in the funnel, that's also a good sign. That means that something is bothering them. They have barriers that you need to break, or something, again, that they don't understand. If your brand speaks one way, like Lee said, and then your product sounds completely different. Like if you're visiting a website and it's all nice and flowy and you meet this beautiful brand persona, tone, and style that the marketing department kind of like designed, but then your product sounds like the backend developer, you probably need help with the UX writing. And I guess the last one is if you're not too sure what microcopy is all about and what UX writing is all about, then that's probably a good sign that you need help with UX writing in a way.
There are so many interesting layers in there, and really, how do you, understanding more about how you actually understand where those blockages are or where those problems are, just by understanding, the tickets in the back end of the system, as you said, or, where those barriers are from a customer perspective and where those blockages are. Those things are such a wealth of information and data, and then becomes a great opportunity to be able to kind of read between the lines of how you could convert that from a challenge to an opportunity.
Yeah, definitely. That's what we love about this work so much, the challenge.
And so you talk a lot about how words impact bottom lines. Can you give us some examples?
Sure. I guess you can look at big companies like Google. A few years back, they changed the call to action on their hotel booking from book a room to, I think it was look at the options or
check availability.
Check availability. Yeah. To check availability. And they've just those two words on the call to action have increased engagement rates by 17%. The reason being is that the Google team realized that people are not ready to book a room yet. They want to check the rates, they want to check the dates. And obviously the button really didn't take you to book a room, so it shouldn't say it. People kind of knew that, but they were hesitant to click on it. And those two words made such an increase. And also, we can give you an example from our world where we helped an amazing company called Exceptional that are doing recruiting for tech jobs for people on the autistic spectrum. And they were having a hard time getting the autistic people to sign up, having that the way they communicate with people and with digital interfaces is different. They're very tech savvy, and they were very hesitant to provide their details online. And so we've learned the way that they communicate, the language that should be used, and we've built kind of a wizard where they can fill in the details. And that increased inquiries by tenfold. So sometimes you just need to understand the language, how to speak, and sometimes it is how to say things differently, even though it means the same things. But always, the impact is always, you will see it very quickly in engagement, you'll see it very quickly in completion of tasks, or you'll see it very quickly in the fact that people are coming back. So these two examples, I think are very general, but you can see examples for even smaller things of like having a few colors, option of colors on a retail shop, just the colors, or having a little word under them stating the actual name of the color. you can see people are having it more easy to choose, understanding what they're going to get, and less returns, etc., and support.
Super interesting. And so when should organizations, when should a writer get involved?
Well, ideally, as soon as possible. I mean, for us, content precedes design, and design and content are not competitors. They are completing elements in the user experience design. However, if you design first, which is something a lot of companies still do, they design and they use a dummy text. So you see a lot of lorem ipsum. And then the writer comes along, but then they are forced to write into a specific space, or there might be a section where a sentence is needed, or a tooltip to help the user understand what's happening there, or even an FAQ should be there, but there's no space for it in the design. And then they edit and it starts to look like patchwork. So ideally, you'll have the writer as early in the process as possible. Having said that, no one lives in an ideal world. So anytime in the process, you can involve the UX writer. And it can be that you find out that support tickets keep coming back. Instead of rushing to the back end, you can just have the writer come in and see if they can tweak something. So at any point, you can call the writer in.
And so thinking about the things that you are passionate about through your work, and we can feel, through your conversation and through this conversation of how passionate you are about this, but what's that one thing that you are championing through your work that you are truly passionate about?
That would definitely be how powerful words can be. We think a lot of businesses, as Lee just said, turn to designers or back-end developers to solve issues that could have been easily solved just using words, right? So I think businesses underestimate the impact words can have and how you can harness the power of words to get the desired actions, behavior, and experiences out of every customer touchpoint. So that's why when you asked me to explain Punct in 5 words, I told you that for me, it's all about turning online words into bottom line numbers. That's what we advocate for.
And I think that piece around moving people to change their behaviors, that to have that desired action, or do we kind of need to start from that part of understanding what that behavioral change is that we're wanting to achieve, or what that desired action is, and then working back from that to really understand what is that experience that they're going to need to create that desired action or outcome? Do you work in that way where you kind of think about the end result first and then coming back through what that journey then needs to be?
Definitely. This is the way we work. If we write an interface for a financial solution, we take into consideration that the common people like us, the everyday person, is not very savvy with mortgages or superannuation, and they kind of hesitant to deal with it, but they have to. And so we take into consideration, where do they want to get? Where do we want to help them get to? And then we go back to, okay, so how are we going to design it? We actually look at 5 main components, which we call them the ABCDE of UX writing. A for audience, so understanding who we're talking to. B is the brand, understanding who is talking. C is the context. It's kind of like understanding where this conversation takes place. Are they in the FAQ section? Are they onboarding? Are they about to pay? And then D is the desired outcome, and we're focusing on what the user wants to achieve here. It also relates to what the business wants to achieve, but if we focus around their desired outcome, we're most likely to achieve our goals as well. And then E, most important, is the experience. How do we want them to feel at the end of this conversation? So yes, to your questions, we look at the behavior first. A is always the audience.
And so this year, TradeSquare has been connecting to women who choose to challenge in their roles. How do you both choose to challenge?
It's a very interesting question. We're actually just working on a project with that perspective. I don't know if you picked up from our accent, but we are bilingual. And so we are doing a project in Hebrew, and Hebrew is a gender-oriented language. And it's very common to use the male way of saying things. And we've challenged the interface to be completely non-gender. It's a very challenging work in terms of writing, because the spoken language and also the written one, and for years and years and years, everybody's spoken in the male way of saying things. And it's really changing the way we speak, but also not making it sound too, like we worked on it too much. It needs to sound natural so people could still relate to the conversation that's happening, but then not feel excluded. If I say you want, but it speaks in a male way, I don't feel included in it. And so we challenged it to be that everybody's included there, regardless to the fact of who they are and what's their gender.
Wow. Can you just explain to us what gender-oriented language really means? Because obviously that translates into every language.
Well, there are many languages that are gender-oriented. The example would be if I tell you in Hebrew, want to join, that would be applicable to both men and women. However, there are languages where you say want to join differently for men and women. And so I don't want anyone to think they can't join. Same with a lot of other words. I think it's a bit hard to translate because in English is not a gender-oriented language, basically.
I think in English, you just have the word you, and you correlates to both male and female. Whereas in Hebrew, for example, you have you for female and you for male, and it's a different you.
And also you for plural women and you for plural men.
Very interesting. We also love to learn about different cultures and then how you then translate some of those interesting learnings, into the work that you do every day. So thank you both so much for sharing your world and your wisdom from the world of Punct.
Pleasure.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
For more information on TradeSquare, head to www.tradesquare.com.au and support Australian business economic recovery and growth with a collaborative approach to the future of business.